Hello and welcome to the Gordy and Gubbs podcast at the end of the 23-24 season. I'm John Gubber, back from a whistle-stop tour of New York and Toronto, and as usual, over in Seattle is our good friend Gordon Hill. Gordon, how are you?
Hello, John. Hello, everybody. Nice to be back, and not too much to talk about for a week before the season starts again.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, United fans were celebrating winning the FA Cup a week ago, and this weekend we saw Real Madrid win the Champions League yet again. We've only got a few days before the Euros kick off, and that's what I wanted to talk about, really. The fact, are we having too much football? We're counting down now to the 2026 World Cup, which will be expanded to 48 teams from 32 teams. We've got an expanded Champions League coming up with 32 to 36 teams, and all European leagues, European competitions are all increasing in size. So the big question is, are we playing too much football?
Very good question, John, and I think there's a lot of people going to be asking that question, and there's going to be a lot of pundits turn around and say, yes, it's simple as that. There's no long answer to this one. We are basically going to be pushing these players to their outer limits and asking outrageous games and outrageous, schedules. So, yeah, too many games.
On top of the tournaments that I've already mentioned, we've also, over in America, you've got the Copa de America, and you've got, over in Paris, we've got the Olympics. And a story that broke in the last 24 hours here in the UK is whether or not United are going to let Garnacho play in the Olympics, because he's already played 50 games. He's only a young boy who's 2 years ago was playing in the FA Youth Cup final. He's played 50 games for United already this season. He's already been named in the Argentina team to play in the Copa de America, which is in the States in June and July. And then he's eligible, being under 23 for the Olympics. Do you think we should be protecting players like Alejandro Garnacho?
You can protect him. The manager can protect him. The club can protect him. If you look at it really seriously, John, the African Nations Cup comes into the middle of the domestic season, and players disappear. They get injured, they come back. So yes, the scheduling has been throwing everybody out of the window, and the young players now are going to be asked to do a lot more, and it's like they're rushing it. They're rushing the young players, and that can be detrimental to the player. And I think it could well be over the next couple of years. You've got to pull the reins on it, and especially with the World Cup, you want the fittest to win the World Cup. You want the best to win the World Cup. So every country has got to start thinking, there's two different sections really, John. There's the domestic section, there's the international section. And does the domestic section come into play now, which it has done? It's finished. Now the international. And even when I was playing, we played the league, and then afterwards you was selected for your national team. And you went and played for your national team, and most players got an extra week off if they were with their national team, so you wouldn't come back to pre-season. So, it's only going to be, wow, what are they going to do about it? How are they going to fit all this in?
The thing that will concern Manchester United fans and other club supporters in the Premier League is the fact that I think this season we saw more injuries than we've seen before, and certainly it affected United more than most clubs because we had an unprecedented catalogue of injuries all the time, and it makes it hard for someone like Erik Ten Hag when he's having to fight to keep his players fit. Do you think it's going to get harder and harder for managers to keep their squads fit, or do you think we just have bigger squads?
You've just hit the nail on the head, John. You're going to have the bigger squads. We've gone from 13 to 16 to 18 to 24 players, plus the young players that can come into a squad now. So you've really got a problem, and the problem is you throw more games, you need more players. You need more players, you need more money. You need more money. You just cannot get a settled side because you have injuries coming up. The game of football now is not just Saturday, maybe during the week. It is every day of the week. And wherever they can fit a game in, they fit a game in. And you've got to realise the footballer's body will only take a certain amount before it breaks down. And with the young players, they might, go through it for a couple of seasons, couple of years, but then you get the burnout. And we're seeing a burnout a sight lot more earlier than we did when, say, for instance, we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. And this is what's harming it, because then it falls back on the manager who hasn't got the selection, or he can't select the players because they're injured. They strain muscles, they twist an ankle. And, with games coming up, I always remember that when we did it, when we played on a Saturday. And if we had a game during the week, we enjoyed that. So we'd play on a Saturday, have the Sunday off, come in on Monday, and then play on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, which was fine. And then Thursday, you'd have off, and Friday in. Now it seems like any time, any day, Monday to Sunday. And I do think that it's too much for these players.
It feels almost like a vicious circle, though, because, and I think it involves the player's salary as well, because the more the players get paid more money, the more the clubs want to play more games because they need more revenue to pay the wages. So, do you think either those things should be looked at more closely in terms of are we really looking at wage caps, or are we looking at having less tournaments? I mean, it seems to me that the managers will complain there's too many games, but then pre-season, they're going all over the place, having pre-season friendlies. So you can't have it both ways, really. I mean, the clubs want to make money, the players want to make money, and it seems to me the root of all problems is normally something to do with money. And it's just, where do you draw the line? That's the hard question to answer, isn't it?
There is no answer to it, John. There are going to be questions coming out. There's going to be answers that people throw in. You're going to get the answers from the suits that want to put more people into grounds. You want the supporters to see the better players. The players want to be better, but the problem being is they can't produce it. They're getting extremely good money. And so if you buy a Rolls Royce, you want a Rolls Royce to go forever. It's expensive. You expect it. And I think we can't do that. We've got Rolls Royces out there at the moment with mini engines. And that to me, it shows when it goes on to the performance on the field, and then it swings back into the supporters who don't like what they're looking at. And then they've got to fork out. So it hurts everybody all the way down the line because they want to push.
You talk about expectation, and we live in a world of expectation. I mean, the fans expect all the time, and it makes the job so hard for the managers of the top clubs, whether it's Erik Ten Hag or Pep Guardiola, whoever's in charge of the top clubs, because the fans want immediate success. So I have a lot of sympathy for the season that Erik Ten Hag has had. I mean, I personally want to see him carry on next season, and I think that the media have jumped the gun because they always try and guess what's going to happen, and sometimes they present stories as facts when they're not fact, and then other newspapers and other media report those facts as if it's true. So they have they create their own sort of like their own narrative within their own narratives of something that they might have even made up. So I personally feel that United decided a long time ago that Erik Ten Hag was going to be in charge next season. They've already made plans for pre-season over in America. Erik Ten Hag's on holiday. It would seem bizarre to me now, especially a week after winning the FA Cup, for him to suddenly be announced as not being the manager anymore. I mean, where do you stand on all this?
Well, I look at it. It's been a not a planned season, so to speak. This was never asked, and I think what showed me his, and I'm going to be honest with you, showed me he had the balls was when he came out, and that changed my views. Where through the season he's been, dodging the issues, dodging the questions, not answering back. You've had former players having a crack at him, and I did. I'll be the first one to say that but I think that when you see it and you hear him, when he came out and he showed the balls to have a go at people that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see him come back at people. I wanted to see him tell people exactly what the situation was, not make excuses, but come out with the truth. That's all that's all I wanted to hear. I'm not wanting to change him. I'm not wanting to sack him. But what I do want is the truth coming from him about what is going to happen. You know, the players he got, everybody's going to say, oh, it's a bad buy. He spent a lot of money and he's not got anything back from it except abuse. And he's got to be open to that because he is a United manager, that it goes with the territory. But with the changeover that I'm seeing now is that the Enios people and Erik has got to sit down and work out exactly what he wants to do. All the talking from the different media outlets is great. Oh, yeah, he should be sacked. Oh, yeah, he should be kept. Oh, yeah, they're going in for this player. We've gone through what this season, which not been a successful one on the playing side, but he brought a trophy home. So fine, that's great. That's done. Now we've got to look at what he's going to do in the future and what he's going to bring. Now that again always comes down to our famous word, money.
Yeah.
Money, money.
Yeah. I do feel that, like you've kind of intimated there, that I do feel that Erik's grown into the job. And like you, I sometimes winced when he talked after matches, making excuses after excuses. But it's a lot easier to talk from a position of strength when you just win the FA Cup. But I do feel that he has grown. He has grown a pair of balls, having won the FA Cup. He has encouraged him to be himself. And I think we did see, personally, I get a little bit irritated when people keep saying we don't know what the Erik Ten Hag style is. I think we know what the Erik Ten Hag style is that he wants to play. It's just that he hasn't been able to play it all season because he hasn't had the players he's wanted at all times. He's had too many injuries. In patches against City in that cup final, we saw some beautiful football. I mean, that goal was, for me, playing football, whether you call it the Erik Ten Hag way or the Ajax way or the United way. To me, that was beautiful football. And you won't see better football than that. And if we can replicate that style of football on a more consistent basis, it feels to me that we're starting to develop the team the way that Erik Ten Hag wants. He's obviously good at developing and bringing through young players. I mean, you're a developer. That's your strength. You like to bring through young players and to spot talent. And I feel like Erik, I think he was originally brought in because that's what he can do. I think even before we had the regime change, the football club was thinking, well, we can't afford, the credit cards are all maxed out. We can't keep spending at the level we were spending, even though we do generate more money than other people. Because of financial fair play rules, we have to be more careful in how we spend our money. So there's now more focus on the youth team. And we've got still the best academy in the world, in my mind. The only thing I'd ask is, how do we not catch up Man City, because I think they're a different case and I still think we need to address 115 charges. But how do we catch up a club like Real Madrid who keep winning the Champions League? I think that's 15 times they won it now. How do we ever dream of catching up a club like Real Madrid? What's their model, do you think? And have we got a chance of replicating it, or do we have to come up with a different model?
You leave their model alone. You let them play their model. You create your model. You create what you've got. You can only play a certain way if you have the personnel to play that way. And if you've got players with the talent that they have, then obviously you're going to see it on the field. City are another example where if they don't turn up, you know it immediately. If they turn up, you've got to say, oh my God. It's the same as Real Madrid. Real Madrid they can be silent, which they were for half a game, and then all of a sudden they played some scintillating football, and then they got a couple of goals. And once they got the first one, it was okay, just a case of when. I think that was exactly the same as what United and City were. Exactly the same. United came out to stop your City from doing what they do best, and that is moving the ball, players moving, players very sharp, very, very, and that's scintillating football, which I've enjoyed all season. I think we were spoiled, and I was spoiled because I was watching this football, And I'm going, well, how can we replicate that? And then I went, as a developer, I'm not going to redevelop that. I'm going to develop my own in the personnel and the young players that you have coming through. And then we've seen Mainu, we've seen a couple of other young players not getting their chance in the final, but obviously getting their chance through the season. And it gives us a highlight of what and why the academy is one of the best. You can't change that. That's the game coming through at that younger level. They're producing it. Everybody has got their own academies that they love. Everybody's got their best players. So you've just got to take the ones that you think are going to be the future, and then you give them a chance to put them into the first team. And we've seen it. And I love the way that he had a go at Keane, Alan Shearer, Gary Lineker, and those people that were having a crack at him through the season, so to speak. And then he went back at them, which was really good. That showed me that he cares, and he's now, I think, understood. And I think it's been a learning process for him at being at United. It's not Ajax. You have to be very, very vicious and very straightforward. And I think now that's out of the way, and we've all seen it. I think the Ineos group saw it as well. And I think now we should be able to see a different, and obviously the buys that he's got. And the next hurdle is he's got to sit with Sir Jim and go through his 5 Rs.
A lot of interesting points there, Gordon. And of course, you played your time at United under Tommy Docherty, and he could learn a lot from studying some old videotapes of Tommy Docherty, because he knew how to sell himself and how to take on the media and how to sell the Manchester United Football Club. And it seems to me that exactly what you're saying there, really. I think a lot of people have grown to like Erik Ten Hag more at the end of the season. And the fact that he's grown into the job, it seems stupid now to throw all that away, because I personally getting tired of starting again with somebody new and then having to learn the same lessons, because there's no job like Manchester United. And I think it's interesting when you compare those two games, the FA Cup final and the Champions League. It's all about perceptions. Real Madrid didn't play great in the final, but then they get all the praise for having those flashes of genius and winning the game. But when United do it, people perceive it in a different way. But what I'd like to ask you is, do you think it was a case of Man City not turning up, or was it a case of United not letting them play? I thought that tactically, Erik Ten Hag won that match hands down. And Pep Guardiola is the media darling. And Erik Ten Hag, the media love to try and get him the sack. That's almost like a sport for the media.
I think that was being built up prior to the FA Cup. I think everybody, Guardiola's got this game to win the Premiership. And then you look at Ten Hag, that if he loses this game, it's his last one, and he's got to be on his walking, on the walking side of it. I looked at both the games, and I look at it, and I think it come to a point when Ten Hag had said, I'd won the FA Cup, and then he turned round and then he had a go.
Yeah. That's that manager. That's what we want to see.
That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. I don't want, what he does behind closed door with his players, it's entirely up to him. But what I want to see is I want to see the truth and everything come out from him. And I think this season has been a learner for him. I think he's become a fully fledged manager in terms of being at Ajax, being nice, a selling club and everything else, which was great. And they won trophies in Holland. That's fine. I played in Holland. I know what the Dutch football is. But I tell you what, when he came to United, I think he thought, well, okay, they're going to go. His philosophy had to be sold to the players. But I don't think it having to be sold. I think he had to reiterate it time and time and time again until it sunk into him. And, you got the rebellion where players didn't want to do it. You got players that were shifted out. You got players. And then on top of that, John, you get what we talked about earlier was the injuries that he suffered and everything else. But my point to that was, John, he's got 24 players to be able to get ready for that first team game on a Saturday. And when it wasn't being delivered, and I can tell you as a player, when you got different players playing with you, maybe for the first time, you got to get to know these people. You got to get to know the players. And that's why young players look up to the senior players, because they can direct them. And the senior players look up and they can turn around and say, and that's why the Doc was fabulous at man management. Bobby Robson. And if you look at today's game, we haven't too many managers now that are man management side. If you look at Bobby Robson, fantastic. Venables, fantastic. Tommy Dock, fantastic. Brian Clough, fantastic. They all had their man management skills in a different way. But now we're looking at different managers, and we're really looking at the style of play that they bring with them and want their players to do with them.
Yeah, I think that man management point is a really strong point, and I think that's the thing that we're starting to lose in the game. I mean, players, managers like Brian Clough, he was obviously a great motivator of players. I mean, he had his own unique style, but in the modern game, you tend to have coaches that they set down the agenda, almost like a school teacher, and they expect the players to sort of do what they're told. But I feel like the man management is important, and I feel, people talk about problems in the dressing room, but it's all the off the field problems that I think's dragged United down. Yeah. Things like the Mason Greenwood, Sancho, Rashford's off the field activities when he was going out drinking, nothing to do with football. But when you saw the team celebrate, like Martinez at the final whistle, there's no doubt he's playing for his manager and he loves his manager, and there's a strong bond there. There's obviously a strong bond between Erik Ten Hag and the young players. They obviously they're going to respect the fact that he's given them their chance. He might have just been lucky because he's there at the right time, but he seems to have got a good relationship with the young players. And I feel like there is a strong team spirit within the United side. And as you said earlier, as we both said, the fact that he's grown into the job, it seemed to me be idiotic for United not to have Erik Ten Hag as a manager next season. I'm pretty certain, I've been saying for ages, that I think he's going to be there next season. I think the thing that I'd like to give him a pass on is the transfers, because he's been working with a transfer committee. What was a transfer committee? I think the new transfer committee, I think I'd like to say it more as a transfer committee rather than being told these are the players you're going to get, because I don't see how you can have a manager. I mean, what do you think about that? How do you think a manager deals with these are the three choices you've got, just take your pick from three? I would think that the manager's got to have some sort of input, because he's got to have input into who he's getting and how he's going to play the team. If people are telling him both of those, well, it doesn't work, does it, surely?
No, it doesn't. We've seen the 5 requests, or the 5, the list that Sir Jim has written up and wants him to, you don't have your technical director telling you, the first team manager, how to play, what style of play. Completely different. That's why head coaches and managers have somebody they can trust by the side of them to be able to talk to them, and we see it again and again and again. But if you look at, for instance, like Jason Wilcox should not dictate the style of play to Erik Ten Hag. I would not accept it one little bit. The buys on on Sir James's list would be, okay, I'll tell you what players would be available. You have a look at them, get the price. Let's see, I'd like that player in, and work that way with him. The points that he made were very valid points, but as I said, you got to shift before you can get in. You can't just keep building up the players' side of it. You have to shift, and then if that's shifted and you get good money for the players that are gone, then the possibility of you being able to buy that player that you want. The Galacticos, I totally agree. Because that just sets the standard to say, well, we'll just buy them. And I think that United have never been that type of a club to buy players. They've developed their young players. And yes, times have changed and you may have to buy one or two, but not to the extent that you're buying a team full of Galacticos. Who's to say they're going to play for you? Who's to say that they're not just there because you put in a big bid? We've seen it with Anthony. Bless his heart, I feel sorry for the kid, because he's in the deep end and they're asking him to swim. And at this moment in time, he can't swim. And that's, something that's going to hurt him or the club. And now we've seen that, they want to get rid of him. Jadon Sanchez, I'm sorry, but he to me, he wants the club to change to him, not him to the club, and go on from there. You've got, Mason Greenwood. I had a chat with him. I spoke to him last summer and I told him and this is my advice to him, John, and you was there at the time. I said, Mason, what you've done has been very foolish. I said, you've not thought of the consequences of what your actions are. I said, what you can do now is get away, get your head down, get your football back up, and let your football speak for yourself, son. And if you can do that, I tell you what, you got a future in the game. Now, whether it's back at Old Trafford, which I'm not saying yay or nay, and whether it's somewhere else, he's gone and done that, and now he's a wanted commodity. So, fair wishes to him, best wishes to him, but touch wood that there's a young lad that has learned his lesson, but he had to learn it the hard way. And it's nice to see him. So does he play the way that Ten Hag would want? Would Garnacho try to play the way he wants? Would Anthony, these players, Mount, spent a lot of money on the guy and he's not, he's not had a chance to produce it. We look at Shaw, Luke Shaw, he's the best defender. At the moment, he ain't the best defender in the world. It's because he ain't fit. I know that, John. Just as I done my knee, I was ready to play in the European Cup against Poland. I done my knee. I never played again for England because I done my knee. I lost what I had by just one stupid, silly tackle. And that's exactly what you've got to look at when you buy players. Are they, is over 20, to Jim's over 25, I agree with, because if you look at it, we scout players much younger. And we're seeing it coming through with our young players. So where it was, you can go to your 35, that's like thanks, but no thanks, so to speak. 19, 18, 17, 16, these are the players that will be in the next generation, especially if they bring so many games into the market.
I'd like to say I think you gave great advice to Mason Greenwood. And personally, I think it's a great tragedy that he's ruined his career at United because he could have been one of the great players that played for United. And I feel that for the sake of his family, he's better off staying away from United. He can have a great career away from United. It's very frustrating for a lot of people that wanted to see Mason Greenwood come back. But I just can't see how it's going to happen without it being an incredible circus, which is going to drag the football club down. And there are other players about. I mean, one of the players I've been impressed with the most this season when I've been producing games and match of the day. For the non-big clubs, the player that stood out the most for me is a player that plays kind of in the Mason Greenwood role. Michael Olise at Crystal Palace. For me, he's a superstar in the making. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get him, he'll go to Chelsea, because I think he is a superstar guaranteed. I mean, every time I've seen him, he's been superb. Sometimes you don't know with a young player. When we got the other kid from Crystal Palace, he didn't get a fair crack because he was Fergie's last signing and he never fitted in with David Moyes. So it's always about arriving at a football club at the right time. But personally, I like to see Michael Olise at United. I like to see Mason Greenwood continue to rebuild his career somewhere else. But I do worry that we have too many players in a similar role because I wouldn't rule out Anthony just yet. I think he'll never get over the fact we paid too much money for him. But that doesn't make him a bad player. It just means that we spent too much money for him. And he's had other problems off the field as well. So he's another player that's had to cope with things because he had those allegations from his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend over in Brazil, and he seems to put that behind him. So maybe next season, what I like about the start of a new season, we all start on 0 points and we all have a fresh start. So there's a chance for everybody who's at the club next season to do well, and who that's going to be. Obviously, a lot of it's going to revolve around who the manager is going to be. But as we've said, I think we both think that Erik Ten Hag's probably going to start the new season still at Old Trafford. I think the more time goes by, it makes it harder for them to get rid of him, because the job of the manager now, this is a really important time, isn't it? This is an important time for the preparation for next season, isn't it?
It is should we say a platform for him to build on. If as we think that he will get another season, is for him to throw everything into that and stop worrying, but go for it and show exactly what he can do in terms of bringing in the players that he wants, getting rid of the players he doesn't want. And it's a couple of months and you're back on the scene again. So he's gone on holiday. Great, have a nice holiday. But you've got to. When I was a manager, you're never on holiday. That phone is always at the end of that, your arm, so to speak, and you're speaking to people all the time. It's like, you can lie there in the sun, but the problem being is you still got the phone and you still got to answer it. So that comes as a manager, but then you've also got to think of your pre-season and what you're going to do. You've got to look at the players, and who's to say that a new manager comes in and all of a sudden decides he wants X amount of players, and he plays a completely different system, and these players have already played a system or tried to play Erik Ten Hag's system, and now all of a sudden somebody else comes in and changes it completely. It's the same as picking a team every week and not having the regular players to play that. You can only play a system if you have the players that can play into that system. You might get, the Crystal Palace guy, and all of a sudden, he comes in and can't do what he's doing because he's been restricted because another player is taking that. So it's a juggling game that everybody says, well, you paid a lot of money for him. Surely he's going to go in there. Well, not necessarily. It all depends again. Your pre-season, I think, is the most, for me, my pre-season has always been the most important part of the season, because it's my foundation to be able to build. And as you plan towards Christmas and try to get as many points as you can in the bank, because you're going to have a lean period, John. And if you have a lean period and you haven't got any points in the bank, as we've seen this year, the 3 that come up are the 3 that went down again. And if you can't put points in the bank at the beginning, you're hard to get them, because as Christmas comes and half the season's gone, you are still hanging on for dear life. You've got to get points. It's then a case of, we must win this one. We've only got 5 left. No, it doesn't work that way. And that's what managers must think, and if they don't, it's the highway.
I think for those reasons that you've outlined is exactly why it's too late to get rid of Erik Ten Hag, because we're now in this crucial period when he comes back from holiday where we've got to prepare for the new season. Also, if you get a new man coming in and wanting new players, we can't afford it. We can't afford to change the whole squad. We've already invested in this squad. We've got to make it work. We've got to be very clever with the money that we do spend. We've got to get rid of a few. So it's limited what we can do. So I don't see how United can possibly get rid of the manager at this point in time if they're going to get rid of Erik Ten Hag. And also, he's got another year left of his contract. And do they really want to pay out his contract and start again with somebody who's not a guarantee? And whether or not United, personally, I think you'll find very few fans who are in favour of having somebody like Gareth Southgate in charge at Manchester United. I personally don't think he's a club manager. I think he's done pretty well with England, but could have won trophies if he'd been a little bit more exciting and a little bit more adventurous in the way that he plays. How do you just turn into the Euros, because that's what's coming ahead, and then maybe you can give your thoughts on whether or not you think Gareth Southgate is a good fit for Manchester United. I don't think he is. But how do you think Gareth Southgate and England will do in the Euros that are just coming up?
I always look at it like the World Cup. Yeah, the not so capable teams will put what they can in at the beginning, but it's like the pyramid. The more games that the England and the Germanys and the Italys and that start to play, John, then the stronger they become, and they get to know more about their players. Because with a national team, you're picking different players from different clubs to go out there and play the way that the boss wants to play. I think as the games go on, then you'll find that they settle down more, and then they start to play as a team. And the stronger teams, as we said, it's going to be the same in the Euros as it will be in the World Cup in 26, and it has never changed. The better teams get stronger and stronger as the competition goes on, and that's exactly what we'll see in the Euros. So I can put him and say, yeah, you might do very well, Gareth, and I wish you all the very best. Of course I do. I'm an England player, so I want you to do well, but there are other teams that are going to be coming after you because you've done so well now. But it's that stigma, John, and it's called you're playing England.
Yeah, yeah.
And it carries you through, and everybody wants to beat you. Everybody wants to have a crack at you. So, will they do well? I really do. I hope they really do well and go as far as they possibly can. I have not even thought about Gareth Southgate being the United boss. I haven't. For me, Gareth is a nice guy, but he's an FA man. That's it. I'm sorry, Gareth, but that's my views on it. You're a Mr. Nice Guy. You're like Gary Lineker. Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Nice Guy. So I wish you well, but not for United. And I would say to you that, yes, what we talked about is I think Ten Hag will be here for another season. And now he's got to pull his socks up and really go for it. Really go for it and show us what he can do.
I think a lot of United fans don't really lose a lot of sleep about what England are going to do. But I must admit, I stopped feeling over passionate about England when they treated David Beckham badly after the 1998 World Cup. But I'd like to see them not winning it by doing it the right way, if you see what I mean. I feel that we've not given ourselves the best chance because we haven't really gone for it. And that's what, even though I think Gareth Southgate is a lovely guy, he's almost too nice to be a football manager. I felt like when we've had teams, when we could have put them down, we haven't gone for it. And we've got we're never going to have these great players. We've had a golden generation before when we didn't achieve anything with Sven-Göran Eriksson. But this team, to me, is even better. I mean, my biggest frustration as a United fan is that we didn't sign Jude Bellingham. I think he's, at the moment, the best player in the world. He might not have had a standout game for Real Madrid the other night, but if you heard Thierry Henry talk about him, he saw the value he had to the team and the way that he played for the team.
Sorry to contradict you there, but I look at Jude Bellingham and I see the players that he's playing with are just making him look even much better. And he looks to me as though he could settle in that midfield role and control everything that happens in that midfield role. And he's got the players alongside him and he's got an abundance. All you have to do is look at the City wonder kid, and all of a sudden, let him have the ball. So between those two, and it's nice for them to be English, is that you've got Foden and Bellingham going out. Are they going to be able to play in the same team? We've had players go before where the manager can only play one because the other one takes off the other one. So it's lovely to have that problem. Really nice to have that problem. But when are you going to pick them?
Well, as you said before, it's a squad game, though, isn't it? I mean, I like to see Kobbie Mainoo get a chance. And
yes,
but I do think
exactly.
I do think that there is a place for Phil Foden. For me, is one of the best players in the world. I mean, the fact that he didn't show up against United, was that down to him? Was that down to United? I don't know, but
we saw two games where it's very similar. The underdogs picked it up and went, thanks very much. But then Real Madrid pulled it off. So I looked at the game and I went, if you're on song on the day, you feel good, you play good. Foden wasn't in the cup final, but I can understand Foden because I was in the same situation 30, 40 years ago when I should have been able to turn it on, and I had a stinking cup final. So it affects everybody. It's not you got to play perfect every day, every week. It's just you want to play well on certain times.
Yeah.
And number one is the finals. And number two, you want to play well for your country.
Yeah. Even the best players can have an off day, as you know, Gordon. But I think that even Jude Bellingham, he gets judged at a high level because he still created the goal that effectively won the game when he set up Vinicius Junior for the winning goal.
There's a player, John. There's a player that I like, Junior. I think that is a typical player that looks like an old-fashioned winger. That you leave him alone, he'll skin you. He's not afraid to cross the ball either. And those type of players are very, very rare to come by. And Real Madrid have got it. Now they got Mbappe. So Mbappe's, so he's there. So, they want to carry on their tradition. They've got 15 trophies. Hey, brilliant. I can't argue with that point. But I want to see United at least do something on that system. And I want England to pull their socks up and say, right, let's grab something.
Absolutely. Well, we're just about running out of time, but I want to throw one last spanner in the works and ask you about VAR. A lot of fans now want to see the end of VAR. How important do you think the Euros are going to be in people valuing or judging how VAR can operate? And is it a case of maybe the Premier League has not operated VAR in the best way, and perhaps when we get to the big tournaments, VAR is used in a more effective way? Where do you stand in VAR?
Yeah, I don't like VAR. I think it slows the game down. I think it's a time waster, so to speak. I think it to me, I look at the calls that are being made. I'm an old-fashioned person. I have three people. I have a referee and two linesmen to pick it up, and possibly a fourth one keeping the time. If they can't do a job in that 90 minutes, the talking points for supporters isn't about the VAR. It's talking about, was that a tackle? Was that a goal? Goal line technology, fine, no problem. That's it. Just use the cameras for them, but nothing else. I don't want somebody from 150 miles away, especially in the Euros, where you're going to get people from all over the place or in different countries, talk about VAR. Oh, it costs us. Let the referee, as we've always done, and the two linesmen decide. I'm not a favourite of VAR. Never have been. Never will be. Leave it to the ref. If we made a mistake, it's a talking point between you and I. It was a goal. No, it wasn't. It was a goal. No, it wasn't. Leave the talking points to the supporters. Let the players enjoy it when they score. If the referee says it wasn't a goal, it wasn't a goal. But if he says it's a goal, enjoy it, support us, love it. Don't take our game of football away from us.
Absolutely.
With cameras.
For me, football is all about scoring goals and celebrating goals. And it seems to me that VAR is all about how can you find a way to disallow a goal. And when I used to watch players like you when I was growing up, it was all about, if you don't talk about the referee's had a good game. But nowadays, you've got referees who've got agents, and we shouldn't be talking about referees and VAR at the end of every game. And it's taking something away from the game for me as a fan. You said it as a player. Let's hope common sense can prevail.
Let's hope that
we can do the right thing.
Let's hope it as we say, referees are great to be seen but not heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a whistle. So
it's always great to see and hear you, Gordon. So I do like hearing and seeing you, and it's always good fun when we chat. And we always talk for longer than we expect. So
I know.
it's time to wrap it up. And until next time, Gordon, thanks for joining us again from Seattle.
Thank you very much, John, and I hope everybody enjoys it.